Hi everyone, this week is Christmas and the holidays, therefore I wanted to just do a quick, short video. Well, because as a New Yorker and a professor, my life is just not chaotic enough. Therefore, I need to look for another source of adrenaline-inducing activities like filming, editing, posting YouTube videos. Hey, and it also helps me with healthy eating habits, as there is nothing better than sitting by my computer while stuffing myself with ice cream, chips, and candy bars looking for an inspiration. But enough about me, let's look at Manhattan, and specifically Washington Heights. This is definitely not going to be a detailed walking tour through the neighborhood, as there are many fascinating things to see here, and a 10, even a 15-minute video would not do justice in exploring the streets. However, I would like to show you a few pictures and points of interest here, and then in the future, possibly examine some of these places in more detail. Well, not even possibly. They are on my list for 2024. But with a better quality camera and a better editing program, because like I mentioned on my channel page, when I began filming some of these locations, I was not doing so for a YouTube channel, but rather for educational purposes. But somewhere along the way, I got a brilliant idea of actually starting a YouTube channel. However, the point is that the quality of some of these earlier videos is not the best, which I promise will improve in the next few weeks or so as I begin using new equipment. In this video, I want to show you a few places in Washington Heights, yes, but more specifically, my starting point is right here, New York Presbyterian Hospital. Due to a family member being here for a long time, I have spent numerous hours just strolling through the streets, and I figured I share some of these images now because maybe someone watching this channel can find it useful and helpful for themselves. Now I say this because you are looking at the biggest hospital in New York City, with over 2,500 beds and a staff of thousands. In 1998, New York Hospital merged with the Presbyterian Hospital, and hence we have the New York Presbyterian Hospital today. A history of this place is fascinating as well, and more on it in the future, but the New York Hospital is one of the oldest hospitals in New York, well, in America actually. It received its royal charter in 1771 from King George III of Britain. Yes, the same king that just 5 years later, New Yorkers said the relationship is so over and we are rebelling against you, hence the American Revolution, during which actually the hospital treated thousands of soldiers. And to make it even more fascinating, the oldest hospital in America is Bellevue Hospital, also here in New York City. However, strolling through the streets, one thing that really is striking and beautiful is the architecture. It is a very hilly location, therefore interesting views, and not far away is actually the highest natural point in Manhattan. However, I want to leave that for the future videos, as to the north there is actually a ton of interesting things to explore, like the Met Cloisters or Fort Tryon. But some of these buildings even have pretty cool artwork, like you see right here. And on many of them, you still see these relics from the Cold War, a fallout shelter. In Queens and in Brooklyn, you still see these signs on some buildings. Here, for example, is a picture of a building which is about 2 blocks away from me in Queens, where I live. However, here, because of the size of these buildings and the number of them, these signs are really more visible than, well, really anywhere else I saw. During the Cold War, especially at its height in the 1960s, in case of a nuclear weapon explosion, New Yorkers were supposed to run for cover to these places which were designated as fallout shelters. Because there was really no federal standard in terms of how they were supposed to look like, Generally, any large enough basement or area underground could have been assigned as a shelter, preferably ready with supplies. As you walk on Riverside Drive, you can see the Trinity Church Cemetery and Mausoleum, where many famous people are buried. Then, a little bit up the street, not far away from the hospital, you get to see this pretty cool birdhouse built on the street. And then, as you see here, you go from the streets to the Hudson Parkway, and right behind it, below, is Fort Washington Park, where you can relax a bit, and it's really an oasis away from the streets above. There are a few places you can enter the park, and some are kind of normal, others really weird. And I am saying weird because you have to pass through the Hudson Parkway, so some places are through a tunnel, some through a bridge or stairs. Depending on where you are trying to enter it, it could be a bit confusing, as many times I was walking out of the park on what seemed to be like an abandoned path between roads, and on many occasions someone actually asked me where this path gets them. And as you see here in the summer, once everything is overgrown and you are walking here for the first time, it could be a little bit confusing and, you know, even possibly scary. I can see that. If you are here by yourself, it does seem like you left the city behind you miles away, even though you still might hear that hum from the highway traffic. In the winter, well, it's like a scene from a horror movie, but at least there is a better visibility around you. But I am just fascinated with these paths, like here. You come down the stairs and it leads to, well, nowhere. I am always just amazed that you can be walking around in the middle of like a busy road intersection and parkway exits. But it does always make me wonder and try to imagine how things were back in the days when it was first built and these major roads were not here yet. And when you enter the park more to the south, like around 158th Street, we have these cool looking lights. I know it's weird, I'm even pointing this out, but sometimes these unique things really catch my eye. However, once you finally get to the park, beautiful images of the Washington Bridge and the Hudson River. There are playgrounds for kids, tennis courts, basketball courts, and most importantly, restrooms, which saved me many times as I was strolling through the area. I mean, one time I went in and there was a homeless man doing stuff. Another time a guy was smoking some weed, so, you know, it made the peeing experience a bit weird, but hey, like they say, if you gotta go, you gotta go. But the walk along the water is very relaxing. Here, along about 170th Street, we have what some people call the Cyphus Rocks, named after Greek mythology. I found this fascinating, and actually doing a little bit of internet searching, you will find that these rocks appeared around 2017, and no, not put here by aliens, but an artist, and ever since it has been an attraction that was torn down and rebuilt by various people passing by, but it's something that became part of the scenery for the area. And as you walk further up, we have the bridge. As if you have not noticed it yet from the distance. I mean, the towers themselves are just over 600 feet, a little bit over 180 meters. That is more than twice as tall as the Brooklyn Bridge towers. The bridge opened in 1931 and it is just a beauty to look at. Or, let's face it, if you are a New Yorker, actually what you are seeing is nightmare and torture, of course caused by traffic. This is the world's busiest bridge. Right below the bridge, however, we have this little red lighthouse. It was originally used in the 1880s in New Jersey, Sandy Hook, but by World War I it became outdated for that location, and eventually in 1921 it was put here. It is the only lighthouse on the Manhattan Island. However, 10 years after it was put here, Washington Bridge opened up above, and its lights and size made the lighthouse outdated once more, and the light was turned off in 1947. A very short walk away from the bridge is something that most people do not even know about. You see, in the summer months, it is right here, behind these trees, so it is not even visible, and you really need to know where to look. So I came here in the fall, and you can see it a little bit better. You have to take this path, well, it's not even a path, you have to walk into the woods basically. Then the so-called path ends, and you have to know to climb these rocks. And once you are on the top, you hit this stone marker. It was put here by the Daughters of American Revolution in 1910, and it marks a redoubt made by the Continental Army led by George Washington during the American Revolution. A redoubt is really like a small fortification, which is usually temporary. At this point, Manhattan is pretty narrow. Therefore, you can walk to the other side of the island in probably like 20-25 minutes or so. You can pass and see the Morris Jumel mansion, which is between 162nd and 160th Street. It was built in 1765. It is the oldest surviving house in Manhattan. Originally, it was built as a summer residence for a British colonel, Roger Morris, and it later became a tavern, and then in 1810 was purchased by Stephen and Eliza Jumel, restored, and became a museum in 1904. Next to it is the Sylvan Terrace, this small little dead-end street that takes you back in time to the 1860s when it was first built. On the other side of the island is High Bridge Park, where again you get to experience the same as on the other side that we just looked at, only with bigger cliffs in some places, therefore you have to watch your step. But you also have to watch your step because in many places there's lots of glass on the floor. Lots, like here. So try not to do this in like flip-flops or anything like that. But you are walking in pretty historic area, as this is the path of the old Croton aqueduct system, which brought clean water to New York City. You know, New York City always had an issue with clean water. Supposedly, it was even harder to obtain than the attention of my students for the whole duration of my 8 a.m. lectures. It's hard to imagine, but true. Clean water was bought by wealthiest residents from those who were able to bring it in and sell it from the north or from Brooklyn. Like today, we buy hot dogs on streets. But others were stuck with drinking dirty water, which was taken from ponds and wells. But, you know, with the growth of population and the city itself, these sources of water became highly polluted. And no surprise, soon came sickness like cholera, but not even disease. But honestly, even water was needed to put out fires. For instance, there was a major one in 1776 that burned many buildings down. Therefore, work began in 1837 on a Croton aqueduct, where water from the Croton River north of New York City was to be brought in. By early 1840s, it was completed and provided the city with the first stable, reliable water supply. This bridge was part of the aqueduct system, and originally it had arches running all along the span like a Roman aqueduct. And today it is the oldest bridge in the city. By 1880s, as the city grew, new aqueducts were built, And ever since, the system evolved and became much, much bigger, until today, where water is taken from the Catskill Mountains and the Delaware River. The high bridge was no longer used, and it became a problem as ships and barges had a hard time passing through it with increased water traffic and ship size. Therefore, the middle 5 arches were replaced with one steel one in 1928. The pedestrian walkway was opened rather recently in 2015, and here we are on it. That is the High Bridge Water Tower. Built in 1872 to provide water pressure, next to it was a reservoir and a pumping station. I hope you enjoyed this short trip with me, and like always, if you like what you see, please subscribe, and I will see you next week in another New York City location. Till then, stay adventurous and safe.